Railroads have been a vital part of the development of the United States. From the Industrial Revolution in the Northeast 1810 to 1850, or the settlement of the West 1850 to 1890, the railroad mania began with the first passenger and freight line on the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad in 1827. The full death toll associated with the railroads across America may never be known. The spirits of the fallen haunt areas all over America, unwilling to move on. I am going to look at some of the more infamous ghostly tales. One famous ghostly tale comes from one of America's saddest moments. On the morning of April 19, 1865, a special train carrying the body of Abraham Lincoln left the Washington, D.C. depot. The train left on a journey to visit hundreds of thousands of heartbroken citizens in 400 communities who lined up to pay respects to their fallen leader. Legend has it the spectre of the train can be seen on the anniversary of its inaugural trip. A black engine billowing smoke has been witnessed. On closer inspection, the president's coffin can be seen, along with a group of loyal Union soldiers who stand ever at guard over old Abe. Another spooky story leads us to the Railroaders Memorial Museum in Altoona, Pennsylvania. The museum tells the story of the hard-working, loyal people who turned Altoona into a world-famous railroad hub. One night, a finance director, after a particularly hard day of work, turned off his light and made his way to the elevator. After a while, the doors opened and he stepped in. He was surprised to see a man standing at the rear of the elevator with his back turned. The man casually turned to look at the office worker over his shoulder, then began to shimmer with light, and then he suddenly disappeared. Later, the director noticed a familiar face in an old railroad photo on display. It was the same man from the elevator. The railroad that crisscrosses Point Reyes has its own spectral tale. Many different witnesses, including the author Philip K. Dick, have reported a ghost train travelling on a non-functioning section of track. It is said the wail of its whistle would wake members of the community in the night. The townsfolk say that it's the vengeful spirit of a train engineer who pushes his train through the dark of the night in search of the group of men who had wronged his daughter. In Duffy's Cut, a section of railroad near Malvern, Pennsylvania, has a spooky tale, which led to a gruesome discovery. For some time, there have been reports of strange orbs of light dancing around a section of track. This had been witnessed many times by numerous people. It is said that it was the spirits of old Irish railroad workers. The railroad were approached so many times that it began to collect and archive the stories. With help from the university trained scientists, they investigated the area of the sightings. The cut was excavated and the remains of a mass grave was found. The bodies were excavated and it was discovered that the railroad workers and their families that made up the grave had all died from gunshot wounds. One hot summer night, a highly skilled train engineer called Britt Craft, in fact he was one of the best in all of Kansas and Missouri, was running his locomotive when he came around a bend to see the approaching bridge was engulfed in fire. He faced a stark choice: run the train at full speed and try and cross the bridge before it collapsed, or bring his engine to a stop and save the passengers, but this would mean his death. A dedicated engineer, his passengers came first. He slammed on his brakes and brought the train to a stop. His engine hit the bridge and it collapsed, and he was thrown to his death. All of the passengers survived. He was buried as a hero. Forward to 1882, the bridge was being rebuilt. Late at night, a train engineer running the same route as Brickcraft distinctly heard the sound of a train whistle. And as he travelled round the same bend and continued towards the bridge, he witnessed a phantom engine surrounded by a green glow steaming down the track. As he passed, the terrified engineer saw Craft's spirit still at his post, forever at the controls of his fated train. This tale has now become legend in Atchison. In our last story, we moved to Marshall's Pass, Colorado. As an old engineer moved his train over 12,000 feet above sea level, he gave mind to a report he had had about a defective rail and an unsafe bridge. It was a cold morning, and he had made his way through the first line of snowshed, when from behind he heard a train whistle approaching. At the same time, the gong in his cab sounded and he applied the brakes. The conductor ran up and asked why he did apply the brakes. The engineer replied, "You sounded to stop." The conductor had not signalled. They both realised that a train was approaching fast. They had to move. After a struggle, the train lurched away. The sound of the wild train grew nearer. Turning a bend, he looked back to see the train speeding towards him. He piled in the coal. His passengers' lives depended on the speed. The train roared along. The engineer forgot about the defective tracks. They readied the passengers for the imminent danger. The madman in the approaching train was seen gesturing frantically. Suddenly a red light appeared. He had to stop. The approaching train continued its pursuit. As the train from behind reached the train in front, it seemed to spread, and the engine toppled from the bank. The whole train fell into a canyon and vanished. As the engineer moved his train out of the way, he noticed words written on his window, warning him that if he travelled the same route again, that he would perish. He quit the very next day. No wreck was ever found. The railroad changed people's lives forever, pulling America into the modern age. Now a vital part of everyday life, it seems, people's spirits will haunt the railroads for all time. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks very much.